In my past videos, I've talked about how the Socialist Party in Portugal basically controls everything. They are corrupt, they are criminal, and they act like mafia, basically. But this mafia behavior doesn't go with just how they do their business and how they supposedly govern the country, when in fact they are using the country's resources and the taxpayers' money for the Socialist Party's agenda. They don't care about governing the country. They just want to propel their interests and their friends and their corporate interests that keep financing their campaigns and filling their pockets with money, as long as these companies have all sorts of great deals with the state at the expense of the taxpayer. It goes also to the level of hiring pretty much all kinds of family members to every position possible in the government. And I will show you some of those ludicrous positions that exist and that are clearly just created to have these people employed. But the reality is that their position is absolutely nothing. They do nothing. That is a joke position, but obviously they get a lot of money for doing so. The number of people in the current government, people with family ties in the current government, is the new record holder. The current government, the alliance between the left and the far left, has the highest number of family ties that we have ever seen in our country. And I already explained to you that the current government has broke pretty much all records. They have the highest taxes ever. They have also made the biggest cuts ever in the public services. They also reached the highest level of debt ever. And the public investment is also the lowest ever. So they have all sorts of bad records, the kind of records that no one wants to have. But when the propaganda machine and the left-leaning media talks about these, let's say, things that the government has done, even though they're bad, they are twisted in a way, in the propaganda machine, they are twisted in a way that it sounds good. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the family ties, and I'm going to go through a few of them. As I said, they are up to 50, but this picture I have here basically talks about a few, and I'm going to pretty much talk about the relationships between these people and also the jobs that they have, the phony jobs that they have. I'll try to explain all of them, and also please bear in mind that the picture here has everything in Portuguese, and I'll try to do a rough translation as I explain each family relationship. So let's start with this one, which is the Minister of Internal Affairs, Eduardo Cabrita, and the Minister of the Sea, Ana Paula Vitorino. They are both married. The second family tie comes with Pedro Nuno Santos, which is now the Minister of Infrastructure. He was recently upgraded, let's say, to Minister of Infrastructure because he was simply a socialist. He was part of the Socialist Party. He was in Parliament, I believe. And the Prime Minister, António Costa, basically gave him this job, Minister of Infrastructure, Pedro Nuno Santos. And he is married with Catarina Gamboa, which is the leader of the office of the Secretary of State for Parliament Affairs. So as you can see, these titles get quite pompous. They obviously mean nothing. These people do absolutely nothing. This is just what we call jobs for the boys and girls. These people don't work. They get really high salaries, although they always complain that the salary of someone in parliament is very low, but it's incredibly high when compared to the average wage in Portugal. But their jobs, their job titles are absolutely ridiculous. This woman, Catarina Gamboa, has some sort of relationship as well with someone else. Oh, it's not a relationship. She is just the boss of someone else called Duarte Cordeiro, who is married. He is a Secretary of State of Parliament Affairs, and Catarina Gamboa is the leader of the Office of Secretaries of State for Parliament Affairs. So this guy, Duarte Cordeiro, which is the Secretary of State for Parliament Affairs, is married to Susana Ramos, who was apparently nominated to be the coordinator of the National Unit for Management of the Financial Mechanism of the Economic European Space. So let me read one more time. Susana Ramos, who is married with Duarte Cordeiro, she has this amazing job title, which I guess is a lot of work. She does a lot, I'm sure. She is the coordinator of the National Unit for the Management of the Financial Mechanism for the European Economic Space. Wow. Amazing, right? Moving on, we have the Minister of Justice, Francisca van Duren. Dunham. Francisca van Dunham, Minister of Justice. She is married with Eduardo Paz Ferreira. And this is another one of those amazing titles. He was picked by the Minister of the Sea. As you recall, I already mentioned her. She is called Ana Paula Vitorino, and she's married with the Minister of Internal Affairs. So the husband of the Justice Minister, Eduardo Paz Ferreira, was chosen by the Minister of the Sea, Ana Paula Vitorino, to be the president of the Commission to renegotiate the concession of the Sines terminal. So this is another this is another one of those amazing titles, and of course they have to be family members. They are all somehow related, or they are friends of someone. The socialist government is not about a government. It's not about getting the most competent people. It's about getting family members, friends, whoever, at the expense of the taxpayer. And that's why they are a mafia. That's why they interfere in the justice cases, as I mentioned before. And you will see one person in this picture here that was actually, the socialists made pressures to the justice system to remove him from a very high profile case here in Portugal. But I'll get to that. Anyway, moving on to the next family tie, we have Francisco Lacerda Machado, who is a technician for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he is the brother of João Lacerda Machado, who is a technician for the company of the Ministry of Defense. Again, these titles are worth absolutely nothing, but of course they get lots of money for it. Another family tie is with the Minister of Social Security, and this guy, his name is Vieira da Silva. This guy is actually married to another socialist woman, Sónia Fertuzinhos. But the family tie or family relationship in here is with his daughter, Mariana Vieira da Silva, who is the Minister of the Presidency. And finally, we'll go to one of the family ties which is more complex, let's say. And here is the one I was talking about, Paulo Pedroso. If you heard my previous video about how the socialists essentially control the justice system, and they have lots of cases in the past where they interfered with justice, and one of them was Casa Pia, a very high-profile pedophilia case in Portugal, and this guy, Paulo Pedroso, was involved in it. And even though there were witnesses saying that he did it, he raped these kids, a few years ago. The pressures from Antonio Costa, which is the current prime minister, at the time he was just another socialist, and a guy that eventually became the president of Portugal, Jorge Sampaio, both made pressures to the justice system to get this guy, Paulo Pedroso, off of the process, Casa Pia process. So you had witnesses in court saying that when questioned about who raped them, they would say it was Paulo Pedroso, and they would be prevented from talking or saying Paulo Pedroso's name because he had been removed from the process, even though there were witnesses saying that he was the one that raped these kids. Anyway, so Paulo Pedroso, which he was an ex-minister, and he was nominated by this government to be, and this is my favorite, probably my favorite job title, which is, he is the spare administrator of Portugal in the World Bank. So he is the spare administrator. They have one administrator, and this guy, Paulo Pedroso, is the spare administrator. So I'm sure he does a lot of work. He does amazing work, for sure. And he is married with Ana Catarina Mendes. And Ana Catarina Mendes is basically the number 2 in the Socialist Party. And he is, or actually she is, brother or sister of António Mendonça Mendes, who is a Secretary of State for Fiscal Affairs in the government. So she is married with Paulo Pedroso, and she is the sister of António Mendonça Mendes in the government. And there's another family tie, also related with this woman, Ana Catarina Mendes, the number 2 in the Socialist Party. She is the sister-in-law with Patricia Melo e Castro, who is basically the main aide of the Prime Minister, António Costa.